bridges are being built around the world that are bigger and more expensive than ever before, connecting communities and fostering unprecedented economic growth. Some are made of steel suspended in the air, and some are made with concrete pillars firmly rooted into the ground. These magnificent structures span vast waterways, traverse rugged terrains, and defy geographical obstacles. In today's video, we're going to be counting down the top 15 most expensive bridges ever made. Let's begin. Number 15. The Chesapeake Bay Bridge. The Chesapeake Bay Bridge is a major dual-span bridge in Maryland in the United States. Spanning the Chesapeake Bay, it connects the state's rural eastern shore region with the urban western shore, between Stevensville and the capital city of Annapolis. The original span opened in 1952, and with a length of 4.3 miles, it was the world's longest continuous over-water steel structure. Less than 20 years later, a parallel span was added, but the Bay Bridge is one of the most important pieces of infrastructure in the region. It's a part of the U.S. Route 50 and U.S. 301, connecting the Baltimore-Washington metropolitan area with Ocean City, Maryland, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and other coastal tourist resort destinations. As a part of U.S. 301, it serves as part of an alternative route for Interstate 95 travelers between the northern Delaware and Washington, D.C. area. In short, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of motorists are crossing the bridge each day and coughing up the $4 toll. But all that comes with a different kind of cost as well. The Bay Bridge is a major point of traffic congestion, and coming here during peak hours will guarantee some serious bumper-to-bumper traffic. Because of its height, the narrowness of its spans, the lack of shoulders, the low guardrails, and the frequency of high wind, the Bay Bridge is often cited as one of the scariest bridges in the U.S. Several weather-related incidents have caused complete closures of the bridge, so it's best to avoid this route when the weather gets crazy. In fact, the bridge has been closed a small handful of times due to extreme weather. The first time was in 2003 during Hurricane Isabel. In 2011, the bridge was closed to all traffic due to the impact of Hurricane Irene, when winds howled over the bridge at 55 miles an hour. In 2012, the bridge was closed due to the effects of Hurricane Sandy, and in 2013, during a nasty nor'easter, high winds again caused the bridge to close. But the bridge is resilient, and it's undergone multiple expansions, and in the end, it's cost taxpayers $778.3 million. Number 14. Tacoma Narrows Bridge. This bridge is living proof that just because you throw a ton of money at a problem doesn't always mean you can solve it. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge cost about $827 million to build and encountered a slew of problems in its day. This bridge is a pair of twin suspension bridges that span the Tacoma Narrows Strait of Puget Sound in Pierce County, Washington. The bridges connect their titular city of Tacoma with the Kitsap Peninsula and carry State Route 16 over the water. The bridge was originally built in 1940, but collapsed, possibly because of an aeroelastic flutter 4 months later before being replaced in 1950. But it still stands today as the westbound lanes of the present-day two-bridge complex. The original iteration of the bridge was named Galloping Gertie due to the extreme movement. This movement was captured on camera, and the footage has been on repeat in American science classrooms and museums for decades. After the infamous fall of the original bridge, Professor Farquharson was commissioned again to test new designs for the bridge at the University of Washington, the home of these models. Tests ensured that the new design would have different outcome than the first, and construction began on April 12, 1948, following the completion of a financing and insurance plan. A major earthquake struck the construction site on April 13, 1949, but the only damage was to a cable that fell into the water and was recovered. A fire 2 months later on the West Tower damaged equipment and tools, but didn't cause permanent damage. The 502-foot towers were completed in July of 1949, and the cables for the new bridge were finished on January 16, 1950. The current westbound bridge was designed and rebuilt with open trusses, stiffening struts, and openings in the roadway to let wind through. It opened in October of 1950 and is 5,979 feet long, 40 feet longer than the first bridge. Local residents nicknamed the new bridge Sturdy Gertie, as the oscillations that plagued the previous design had been eliminated. This bridge and its new parallel eastbound bridge are currently the 5th longest suspension bridges in the United States. Number 13. Arthur Ravenel Jr. Bridge. The Arthur Ravenel Jr. Bridge is a cable-stayed bridge over the Cooper River in South Carolina. The bridge is the 3rd longest among cable-stayed bridges in the Western Hemisphere. It consists of 2 diamond-shaped towers, each 575 feet high. The total length of the structure is 13,200 feet, with the main span stretching 1,546 feet between the towers. Suspending the deck 186 feet above the river are 128 individual cables anchored to the inside of the diamond towers. The roadway consists of 8 12-foot lanes, 4 in each direction, plus a nice 12-foot bicycle and pedestrian path, which runs along the south edge of the bridge overlooking Charleston Harbor and the Atlantic. The bridge is as beautiful as it is unique, but the design is quite intentional. The bridge structure is designed to withstand shipping accidents and natural disasters that have wrecked the region in the past. The span's designed to endure wind gusts in excess of 300 miles an hour, far stronger than those of the worst storm in Charleston's history, 1989's Hurricane Hugo. Engineers also considered the 1886 earthquake that nearly leveled Charleston. The Verrazano Bridge is designed to withstand an earthquake approximately 7.4 on the Richter scale without total failure. To protect the bridge from errant and wayward ships, the towers are flanked by 1-acre rock islands. Ships will run aground on these islands before colliding with the towers. The bridge was designed for traffic of 100,000 vehicles per day. It may sound like an unrealistic number, but as of 2018, the bridge saw an average of 96,000 vehicles per day. It's also pretty famous for a bridge and has been featured in all sorts of films, TV shows, and music videos, and plenty of gamers have driven across the bridge at high speeds from the safety of their couch. So how much did all this cost? Just a cool $836 million. Number 12. George Washington Bridge. If you're from New York or New Jersey, then the chances are you simply refer to this pricey bridge as the GWB. The George Washington Bridge has long been hailed as the most frequently traveled bridge by car in the world. Anyone who lives in New York or New Jersey is usually not a big fan of the bridge, simply because it is an absolute traffic nightmare. It doesn't matter what time of day, 7 days a week, almost 24 hours a day, except for maybe early Sunday mornings, you'll sit in mind-numbing, horn-blaring traffic on the GWB. In fact, you'll usually sit in even more traffic on the Cross Bronx Expressway in the Bronx or on Route 80 or 95 in New Jersey, just trying to get on the George Washington Bridge. It's also one of the last bridges in New York that has toll booths still standing and working. The location of the GWB Bridge was chosen in part to its proximity to New York City's Fort Washington and New Jersey's Fort Lee. These were fortified positions held by George Washington as a general long before he became America's first president. During the American Revolutionary War, Washington and his army attempted to prevent occupation of New York City by the invasion of the British military that was sent by King George of England. When the attempt failed, General George Washington fled across the river from what is now known as Manhattan today to New Jersey's Fort Lee. Once the war was over and America officially became recognized as a free nation, the crossing of the Hudson River between New Jersey and New York was only done by ferry. Cut to modern times and $1.1 billion later, this double-decker bridge currently features an 8-lane upper deck capacity, allowing 4 lanes of vehicular traffic to trek across the Hudson River from each direction. The upper deck of this bridge also accommodates pedal bikes and pedestrians looking to cross the Hudson. In total, there are 14 lanes, accommodating the heavy traffic that also comes in from the Cross Bronx Expressway, the Trans-Manhattan Expressway, and 4 different highways, one of them being Interstate 95. This is the same interstate highway that drives along the east coast of the United States, stretching from Miami, Florida, up to the Houlton-Woodstock border crossing between the state of Maine and the Canadian province of New Brunswick. From start to finish, this is slightly over a 1,900-mile drive. Nearly 89 miles of this highway pass clean through the state of New Jersey, while 23.5 miles stretch across New York. Crossing a bridge may be a nightmare, but the structure is as much a staple of the Big Apple as a slice of pizza or a dirty water frank. Number 11. The Confederation Bridge. This incredible feat of engineering, known to locals as the Fixed Link, provides the only road link between the province of Prince Edward Island and New Brunswick in mainland Canada. Stretching an impressive 7.5 miles across the Northumberland Strait, the Confederation Bridge is the longest ship in Canada and the longest span in the world to extend over the seasonally ice-covered waters. It also takes a full 10 minutes to drive across, but believe it or not, this bridge was built in 1997, despite there being various proposals for a land link between the provinces starting as early as the 1870s. With the rising costs of ferry service, a proposal by a Nova Scotia businessman was the only one that finally stuck, and the consultation process began. As with any good infrastructure project, there were some who opposed the bridge, citing fears that it would change their little island, or possibly endanger the marine ecosystem of the strait. In the end, and after an amendment to the Constitution of Canada even, a multi-span concrete bridge was greenlit and construction began. The bridge is a two-lane toll bridge that carries the Trans-Canada Highway between Borden-Carleton, Prince Edward Island, and Cape Jour-Main in New Brunswick. It's a multi-span balanced cantilever bridge with a post-tensioned concrete box girder structure. Most of the curved bridge stands 131 feet above the water, with a 197-foot navigation span for ship traffic. The bridge sits on 62 piers, 44 of which stand 820 feet apart from one another. The speed limit on the bridge is a cool 50 miles an hour, but can vary with winds and weather conditions. As originally hoped for, the eye-catching bridge did indeed facilitate an increase in tourism, and it remains a vital connection between the nation and its smallest province. A toll bridge, it does cost just under $50 to cross with the average vehicle. Interestingly, cyclists and pedestrians are not permitted on this narrow bridge due to safety concerns, but a shuttle is there to ferry them across. In all, the Confederation Bridge cost $967 million to build. Number 10. Tsing Ma Bridge. Tsing Ma Bridge is in Hong Kong, and it's the world's 16th longest span suspension bridge and the second longest at the time of completion. The bridge was named after the two islands it connects, Tsing Yi and Ma Wan. It's got two decks and carries both road and rail traffic, which also makes it the largest suspension bridge of this type. It's also one of the most expensive, costing $1.35 billion to build. The Tsing Ma Bridge has a main span of 4,500 feet and is 676 feet tall. The 135-foot wide bridge deck carries 6 lanes of automobile traffic with 3 lanes in each direction. The lower level contains 2 rail tracks and 2 sheltered carriageways used for maintenance access and traffic lanes when particularly severe typhoons strike Hong Kong and the bridge deck is closed to traffic. The bridge was designed by Mott MacDonald. The firm designed an early iteration of the bridge in 1982 with a 2-lane dual carriageway on top of the deck and a light railway on the lower deck. The bridge was redesigned in the beginning of 1989 to account for a 3-lane dual highway and the heavier airport railway. The designers were inspired by the Forth Bridge in Scotland and the Severn Bridge in England, but this bridge has become incredibly popular over the years, and not just for those looking for a quick and easy route to Hong Kong National Airport. It's become a scenic spot as well as a landmark. There's a visitor center there and a viewing platform where travelers can look out over the waters below and get a great view of the nearby Ting Kau Bridge and Kap Shui Moon Bridge. It was even a leg of the Hong Kong Marathon up until 2016. Number 9. The Danyang-Kunshan Grand Bridge. The Danyang-Kunshan Grand Bridge is a marvel of modern-day engineering. It's over 100 miles long in length and has taken bridge building to a whole new level. Even though it may have lost its title as the world's longest sea-crossing bridge to the recently built Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, it still holds a record and it's a world-beater. Oh, and it cost about $8.5 billion to build at around $51 million per mile. The bridge is a cable-stayed bridge that consists of 2 main sections, the Danyang section, which is 32.5 miles long, and the Kunshan section, which is 69.9 miles long. The bridge was designed to allow large ships to pass underneath it, and it's got a clearance of 492 feet. The bridge was mostly built, though, to improve transportation in the Yangtze River Delta region, which is a major economic hub in China. It's part of the Hangzhou-Nanjing Expressway, which of course connects the cities of Hangzhou and Nanjing. The bridge has reduced travel times between these two cities from around 4 hours to just over an hour. It's pretty good. As mentioned, the construction of the Grand Bridge was a major feat of engineering, and it required the use of some of the most advanced technologies and techniques to get the job done. This bridge was designed to withstand earthquakes, typhoons, and other natural disasters, and it's expected to have a lifespan of over 100 years. The epic journey over the bridge takes in canals, rivers, lowland rice paddies, lakes, and uneven terrain, as well as major cities and towns. It's difficult to understand how engineers were able to design such a phenomenon that undulates to such a degree. But who did design this behemoth bridge? Well, it wasn't some award-winning world-class designer. Instead, it was the China Road and Bridge Corporation, a subsidiary of China Communications Construction Company that was behind the project. This is a Chinese government-funded company that was originally part of the Foreign Aid Office of the Ministry of Communications in China. This is a company that leads major civil engineering projects in China, including highways, railways, bridges, ports, and tunnels. Number 8. The Verrazano Bridge. The $2.4 billion Verrazano Narrows Bridge is a suspension bridge connecting New York City boroughs of Staten Island and Brooklyn. It spans the Narrows, a body of water linking the relatively enclosed New York Harbor with lower New York Bay in the Atlantic Ocean. It is the only fixed crossing of the Narrows. This double-deck bridge carries 13 lanes of Interstate 278, with 7 on the upper level and 6 on the lower. The span is named for Giovanni da Verrazano, who in 1524 was the first European explorer to enter New York Harbor and the Hudson River. The Verrazano Bridge has a central span of 4,260 feet. It was the longest suspension bridge in the world until it was surpassed by the Humber Bridge in the United Kingdom in 1981. The bridge has the 18th longest main span in the world, as well as the longest in the Americas. The upper and lower levels are supported by trusses each underneath the roadway, which stiffen the bridge against vertical, torsional, and lateral pressures. The anchorage on the Staten Island side contains a facility for heating cinders that are used to de-ice the bridge deck along those rough New York winters. The Narrows is the only entry point for large cruise ships and container ships that dock in New York City. As a result, they must be built to accommodate the clearance under the bridge, meaning at high water that clearance is 228 feet. The RMS Queen Mary II, one such vessel built to Verrazano Narrows bridge specifications, was designed with a flatter funnel to pass underneath the bridge, and it's got 13 feet of clearance under the bridge during high tide. This bridge has been a staple for the bridge and tunnel crowds for decades, and while all true New Yorkers come from just about every different walk of life, they all have one thing in common: they would never be caught dead calling the bridge by its full name. So unless you want to stick out like a sore thumb, just call it the Verrazano. Number 7. The Great Belt Bridge. Easily one of the most breathtaking and expensive bridges in the world, the Great Belt Bridge is a multi-element fixed-link crossing in the Great Belt Strait between the Danish islands of Zealand and Funen. It consists of a road suspension bridge and a railway tunnel between Zealand and the small island Sprogga in the middle of the Great Belt, and a box girder bridge for both road and rail traffic between Sprogga and Funen and runs for 11 miles. The term Great Belt Bridge commonly refers to the suspension bridge, although it may be used to mean the box girder bridge or the link in its entirety. It's officially named the East Bridge. This suspension bridge was designed by the Danish firms Cowie and Ramboll, and the architecture from Dissing and Weitling. It's got the world's 6th longest main span, and at the time of opening the bridge, it was the 2nd longest, beaten by the Akashi Kaikyo Bridge that opened just a few months earlier. The East Bridge was built between 1991 and 1998 and cost $950 million. It was planned to be completed in time to be the longest bridge in the world, but there were delays in construction. The bridge's vertical clearance for ships is 213 feet, meaning an Oasis-class cruise ship, the largest in the world, fits underneath with its smokestack folded. At 833 feet above sea level, the 2 pylons of the East Bridge are the highest points on self-supporting structures in Denmark. Then there's the western side of things. The West Bridge is a box girder bridge between Sprogga and Knutshavet. It's just over 4 miles long and has a vertical clearance for ships of 59 feet. In 2022, the bridge was even used as a leg of the Tour de France. The entire bridge, including both east and west, and the East Tunnel, cost a whopping $4.4 billion. Number 6. San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge Eastern Span. The San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge, known locally as the Bay Bridge, is a complex of bridges spanning San Francisco Bay in California. As part of Interstate 80 and the direct road between San Francisco and Oakland, it carries about 260,000 vehicles a day on its 2 decks and has one of the longest spans in the United States. The bridge has a long and rich history, having been conceived as early as the California Gold Rush days, with eccentric imperialist Emperor Joshua Norton famously advocating for it, even though construction wouldn't begin until 1933. The bridge finally opened in 1936, 6 months before the Golden Gate Bridge. It originally carried automobile traffic on its upper deck, with trucks, cars, buses, and commuter trains on the lower. In 1963, traffic was reconfigured to the one-way traffic on each deck, westbound on the upper deck and eastbound on the lower, with trucks and buses allowed on the upper deck. But a lot has changed since then, with the bridge undergoing several renovations, modifications, and eventually the eastern replacement span. Bridge design experts have known for over 30 years that a major earthquake on either the San Andreas or the Hayward Faults could destroy the major cantilever span. Little was done to address this problem until the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake rocked the region with disastrous results. The earthquake measured 6.9, causing sections of the bridge to collapse. Lawmakers took years to come to an agreement, with countless bids being placed to see who would take on one of the largest infrastructure projects in the U.S. This project lasted from 2002 to 2013, replacing the previously unstable bridge with a new one. Now the Bay Bridge is the longest self-anchored suspension bridge in the world, spanning 2,047 feet long, all anchored to a 525-foot tall tower, carefully balancing 90% of the structure's weight. The new Bay Bridge is totally earthquake-proof, with the help of 17,000 strands of wire wound tightly with a 2.5-foot thick diameter, with the cables looping all the way around the roadway. But seismic activity wasn't the only thing plaguing the original Bay Bridge. The soil in the area, to put it nicely, is less than ideal, so extra care was put into the columns to keep everything lodged right where it needed to be. The entire overhaul cost taxpayers a hefty $7.2 billion. Number 5. Jiaozhou Bay Bridge. Qingdao Jiaozhou Bay Bridge is a 16.6-mile-long roadway bridge in Qingdao, Shandong Province of China, which is part of the larger 25.8-mile Jiaozhou Bay Connection project. The longest continuous segment of the bridge is a pinch over 16 miles long, making it one of the longest bridges in the world. This bridge transects Jiaozhou Bay, which reduces the road distance between Linkang District and Huaodong District in Qingdao by 19 miles, compared with the expressway along the coast of the bay, reducing travel time by a good hour and a half. The construction used 450,000 tons of steel and 2.3 million cubic meters of concrete. It's designed to be able to withstand severe earthquakes, typhoons, and collisions with ships. The bridge is supported by 5,200 concrete piles, and across sections consist of two 115-foot-wide beams carrying 6 lanes with 2 shoulders. All of this ran up a bill of about $1.5 billion. This bridge has 3 navigable sections: the Changkou Channel Bridge to the west, the Dagu Channel Bridge to the east, and the Hongdao Channel Bridge to the north. The Changkou section has the largest span of the entire Bay Bridge at 850 feet across. The Hongdao Channel Bridge section has a span of 390 feet, and the non-navigable sections of the bridge have a span of 200 feet. Here's where those world records come in. After the bridge opened in 2001, Guinness World Records burst onto the scene and listed it at an exact 25.84 miles, which made it the longest bridge over water. Sadly, though, for the Jiaozhou Bay Bridge, Guinness handed over the title to the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge in October 2018. The bridge builder Shandong Gasso Group claimed that the Jiaozhou Bay Bridge had the first oversea interchange in the world, and that it has the world's largest number of oversea bored concrete piles in an attempt to hold on to that world record for as long as possible. Number 4. The Akashi-Kaikyo Bridge. The Akashi-Kaikyo Bridge is a suspension bridge that links the city of Kobe on the Japanese island of Honshu to Iwaya on Awaji Island. The bridge is part of the Kobe-Awaji-Naruto Expressway and crosses the busy and turbulent Akashi Strait, for which the bridge is named. It was completed in 1998 and at the time was the longest central span of any suspension bridge in the world, at 6,532 feet. Currently, it's the second longest, behind the 1915 Chanakale Bridge, which opened in March of 2022, but it's still one of the most expensive bridges ever built, costing $7.3 billion. The bridge has 4 substructures, 2 main piers beneath the water and 2 anchorages on the land. The bridge's towers are located in an area of strong tidal currents, where the water velocity exceeds 7 knots, so the bridge was made especially sturdy to withstand this natural force. It's got 3 spans. The central span is 6,532 feet, and the other 2 sections are each 3,150 feet, and the bridge is 12,831 feet long overall. The 2 towers were originally 6,530 feet apart, but the 7.3 magnitude Great Hanshin earthquake on January 17, 1995 moved the towers so much that the central span had to be increased by just 3.3 feet. The bridge was designed with a dual-hinge stiffening girder system, allowing the structure to withstand winds of over 170 miles an hour, earthquakes measuring up to magnitude 8.5, and nasty sea currents. This bridge also contains tuned mass dampers that are designed to operate at the resonance frequency of the bridge to dampen any forces. Number 3. Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Alright, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge is a 34-mile bridge tunnel system consisting of a series of 3 cable-stayed bridges, an undersea tunnel, and 4 artificial islands. It's both the longest sea crossing and the longest open-sea fixed link in the world. The HZMB spans 2 channels connecting Hong Kong and Macau and Zhuhai, which are 3 major cities on the Pearl River Delta. The bridge was designed to last for 120 years, and it cost $18.8 billion to build. The cost of constructing the main bridge was estimated at $7.5 billion alone, mainly funded by bank loans and shared amongst the governments of mainland China, Hong Kong, and Macau. This apparently was a group effort of epic proportions. Set to be open to traffic in late 2016, the structure was completed on February 6, 2018, and journalists were some of the first people lucky enough to get a ride over the brand new bridge. This bridge opened to the public shortly thereafter and was inaugurated by Chinese leader Xi Jinping himself. Talk about a royal affair. Number 2. Øresund Bridge. Supporting both cars and trains as they pass between Denmark and the southern tip of Sweden, the Øresund Bridge transitions from bridge to tunnel as the roadway and railway dip beneath the waves. In fact, the name Øresund is a bit of a mishmash of Danish and Swedish to commemorate the connecting countries and cultures, connecting the Swedish city of Malmö to the Danish metropolis of Copenhagen. While building the bridge over the Øresund Strait was not a huge challenge in itself, doing so without interfering with the air traffic above or the shipping traffic below seemed almost impossible. Building a suspension bridge tall enough to allow ships to pass beneath it would prevent the busy Copenhagen airport from functioning. A bridge built any lower would have halted ship traffic. A simple yet unusual solution was a bridge that would descend beneath the waves halfway across the strait. A man-made island known as Peberholm was built to support the transition point, and a tunnel was dug beneath the strait on the Danish end, known independently as the Drugden Tunnel. On the Swedish side, the sweeping suspension bridge was constructed to slowly slope right into the water, making it look like from the outside as if the bridge gives up and curves into nothingness. Today, the bridge is the longest automobile and rail bridge in Europe, despite being half-tunnel. With an estimated 17,000 cars passing over and under the Øresund Strait each day, the span brings a literal meaning to the phrase bridge and tunnel crowd. So just how much did this European dynamo cost? Try $7.87 billion. Number 1. Honshu-Shikoku Bridge Project. The Honshu-Shikoku Bridge Project is a system of bridges connecting the islands of Honshu and Shikoku across the inland sea of Japan, which before the bridge were previously only connected by a ferry. It consists of 3 major expressways and their respective bridge systems, the Kobe-Awaji-Naruto-Seto-Chuo and the Nishi-Seto expressways. The Eastern Expressway was completed in 1998. Crossing the Akashi Strait, this connection links Hyogo Prefecture on Honshu with Tokushima Prefecture on Shikoku, using Awaji Island for most of its length. The route connects the Sanyo Expressway at its northern terminus, allowing traffic to connect to Himeji, Kobe, and other major cities on Honshu. This connection uses 3 suspension bridges, one of which was previously mentioned as the Akashi Kaikyo Bridge, the Onoruto Bridge, and the Muya Bridge connecting Oge Island with Shikoku. The Seto-Chuo Expressway connects Okayama Prefecture to Kagawa Prefecture via a series of 6 major bridges and 5 viaducts. The Nishi-Seto Expressway was completed in 1999 and connects Hiroshima to the Ehime Prefecture. The link consists of 9 bridges: the Shin-Onomichi Bridge, Inoshima Bridge, Ikuchi Bridge, Tatara Bridge, Omishima Bridge, Hakata-Oshima Bridge, and the 3-part Kurishima-Kaikyo Bridge. The Nishi-Seto Expressway is the only route that can be crossed by pedestrians. With so many bridges linked together, the Honshu-Shikoku Bridge Project cost more than all of the other 14 bridges on this list combined, $68.55 billion. I'll see you next time. Thank you to our channel members.